On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, Return of the Mac, Selfish Olympians, the B&T MP5 SD, and in Russia, you go to jail for that. Okay, welcome back everybody. This is episode 395 of the John 1911 podcast, and today is Friday, February the 20th at 7:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is going to be a solo episode. I'm doing it last minute. You will have noticed that we have been offline for a little bit and things have slowed down. Unfortunately, I have been ill. So I'm not one of these kinds of people that likes to, I feel like a lot of people capitalize on their own personal tragedies and problems. And that I just never felt good about that. But I will say this. I guess I've now experienced my first serious grown-up illness. So I guess I'm not a kid anymore. Or as Kraken once told me, we're long past middle-aged. So, it did look pretty bad there. And right now, again, without getting into too many details, right now it appears possibly that I may have been poisoned. So I'm apparently not having a heart attack or heart failure or whatever the else was going on. So everything's fine. We're not going to talk about this anymore. We're going to chill out. I'm ready to get back to things. I was very tired. If I sound like I've got a lot of energy today, it's because I do relatively, but I mean, 2 days ago, I almost was passing out standing up. So, it was very difficult for me to get stuff done. So, let's just get on with the show. So first thing, the Indiana Bears. I just, I heard the news. Many of you follow the NFL or are fans of it. I'm known for not being a fan of the NFL. I can say that, when they were kneeling, that I never forgave them for all that. But the reality was that wouldn't be true. I mean, that is true, but they never really had me as a customer anyway. So I'm not going to, be like some Hollywood liberal and tell you something like, I'm leaving America to move to Italy or move to England because of Donald Trump. It's like, no, you're moving there because you wanted to anyway. And I don't watch the NFL because I don't want to anyway. The kneeling was just, a convenient way for me to cap on it. But I am a business person, and I don't claim to understand the particular ins and outs of individual franchises. I know more than probably the average person about what goes on with the Cincinnati Bengals franchise just by virtue of proximity, serious proximity to the people that own that team. But I couldn't have told you who owned the Chicago Bears. But I find it interesting is that a lot of these politicians, especially libs, and I don't mean to speak in generalities, but you have to here. They don't understand something that you can ruin a good thing and, don't kill the goose that, don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And you just think that, well, if the Chicago Bears can't ever leave because reasons and tradition and history, I mean, a lot of the national match shooting doesn't happen at Camp Perry, Ohio anymore. We've seen the Oakland Raiders aren't in Oakland anymore. The Browns? Were the Browns? Were they originally from Baltimore? I don't even know all this stuff. The Jets, the Mets, the Giants, they've all moved. And so, I assume that business environment, tax environment, maybe even safety and security. I don't know that. I don't know what upstate Indiana is like, but I think it'd be fair to assume that it's probably an improvement if they pull it off. And incidentally enough, I've never shared this on pod, but I've had this conversation with people in Cincinnati, as again, just as a business person, but not really a football fan, I have made the argument that the Cincinnati Bengals and the Brown family should move the Bengal franchise out of Cincinnati and off that riverfront and go north and put it in Warren or Butler counties. So Cincinnati is in Hamilton County, and I've obviously executed Operation Evacuate Cincinnati, Hamilton County, and a lot of businesses are doing the same thing. You're seeing all these, like every city will have these, say, these cornerstone major hospitals, and then they'll have satellite hospitals. But in the Cincinnati region, you're seeing these institutions that have been around for 100, maybe in some cases 200 years. Let's see, 1860, 150 years, that they'll have a equally as big campus and with more and more services, but they'll be the next county over, like this, and basically in the suburbs, where the original campus from 150 years ago is now basically a shithole war zone, governed by people who are communists and don't care about law and order and crime. And I always wondered if some of these hospitals in the city would close, and they would just leave the one hospital, for the level 1 trauma center, for their ghetto customers, which is what it's really for. And, they're leaving too. So again, people in Chicago, don't feel like you're being singled out here. You're not. This is something that's going to be happening throughout. It's been going on for a while in America, really since, I don't know. I think it's really safe to say since probably not the George Floyd, probably the Ferguson riots. A lot of people just don't. Old people like me remember that I'm going to speak in TV shows and tropes here, so I can kind of get people to understand where I'm coming from. So if you were to take TV shows like, say, The Cosby Show with this family that, lives in the city, or Sex and the City, single women who are in their, whatever their age is, but they're not super young, but they're, upper middle class, live in this urban environment, in this urban lifestyle. This whole safe New York City, Manhattan lifestyle is only really something that existed for about 15 or maybe 20 years. Because from about 1968, late 60s, all the way up through the 1980s, these cities were fucking disaster war zones. That's where all the hardcore rap came from. That's where all the hardcore, the movies came from, talking about urban lifestyle. That you can, these people that if you're of a certain age and you've lived in a city, a mid-sized city or a large city, and where things have been great, say through the 90s and into the 2000s, you think that the situation you're in at that moment is going to last forever. And so you don't invest in it and protect it and husband it and try to help it flourish. It becomes all about me, and not being more civically minded as to how good you have it. And these cities are going to return back to what you would call return to the mean, where they're basically shitholes run by incompetent people. And so you'll notice I started talking about Chicago, but I'm really not talking about Chicago. I mean, you've got the rest of Illinois wants to secede from Chicago. You've got Western Virginia that wants to secede from Virginia and join West Virginia. You've got, parts of Oregon that want to break away. Northern California wants to break away. And this is all related. This is the same story. So I think I'm going to follow with great interest. The Indiana Bears. Yeah, interesting. we'll follow up on this one. So let's talk about the Olympics a little bit. I've had a lot of time to sit around and, consume the media and see what's going on, and can barely talk and barely breathe, and barely walk. But so you're all going to get it now. So there's a couple stories here. There's one, I can't pronounce her last name. It's Ellen or Eileen Gao or Gu, Gu, and it's this girl. She's very young. I think she might be 22 right now. I guess she's 22, but she is an American citizen, and she is some kind of winter sports downhill skier, and she's representing China. And for some reason, she's getting a lot of backlash. She lives in California, kinda. She's a U.S. citizen. Here's what they're not telling you, and I think it's worth mentioning. She doesn't bother me that much because if you look here's how her situation works. This girl, if you're interested, her mother's a Chinese national, who is, last I checked, is a member of the Communist Party. They speak Chinese at home. She's basically just kind of an anchor baby. They had made a decision a long time ago as a family that this Eileen Gao girl, because she might be partially white. I'm not entirely sure on that, but she's conventionally an attractive girl, and so she has a certain look that is very popular in Asia. So I'm just speaking facts here. I'm not speaking opinion, but like that kind of, there's pretty girls everywhere, and there's pretty Asian girls, and there's pretty, whether you're Chinese or Japanese or Korean or Filipino, they all have individual looks, because I've had that explained to me. I once dated a Japanese girl, and she gave me a whole big lecture about the skin folds on the eye. Welcome to my youth. But I believe this Gao girl might be a little mixed, and that little bit of mix is real popular in Asia. So what this family has decided to do is, she's a superstar in China. She is a superstar. She's popping up on your radar because of the Olympics and because of, TV coverage. And then there's people that want to talk about her, and she's an American citizen, but she's representing China, and she's a traitor. And she does commercials in China for luxury CPG goods, like, Burberry. I think I've seen Burberry ads for her. I wouldn't be surprised if she does cell phone commercials. She is a celebrity in China. And so she goes to China to make money. She maintains residency in California because her parents aren't stupid. And she trains a lot. I think she bounces between Canada, Italy, and I don't know, somewhere else. Because she does skiing in snowy weather. So, she's obviously not, practicing her skiing in Jamaica. So that's kind of her bag. So, but just to give you some perspective here, just like geopolitically, this girl, as far as I'm concerned, she's a Chi-Com. She may be a U.S. citizen, but if war were to break out between the United States and China, there is a very good chance that they would leave the country. They would choose to leave if they could. With her mother's affiliation, if a war were to break out and it were to last more than just, say, a few days, if this were to be some big protracted war, there's a good chance her mother would probably end up being arrested, because she would be an unregistered foreign agent in the country. So just keep that in mind. I hate to say it like this, but they're not really Americans. They're not loyal to America. They kind of live in America sometimes when it's convenient, but they don't, at least right now, they don't care. Maybe in their secret heart of hearts, they love America, but outwardly they don't proclaim that because they want the Chinese to love them. And so they've chosen to market themselves to the Chinese, and they portray themselves as Chinese. Like, it's a big deal. Like, I mean, it's, this girl's been around for a while, and she's been a superstar for a while. She's kind of like the Lindsey Vonn of China. Like, yeah, she's like the Lindsey Vonn of China, except at the beginning of her career, not at the tail end of her career. And speaking of Lindsey Vonn, Lindsey. First of all, let me go ahead and let's start this off by saying that, Lindsey suffered a grievous injury, competing. I guess she was in I don't know if she was in a practice and she tore her ACL, and then she decided to compete, or she was at the Olympics, so I don't know if she was a warm-up or if it was a competition, but she had a bad accident and tore her ACL. And instead of pulling out, she decided to keep going, and she had this horrible accident where, I mean, what I've heard described and what's like, she broke her leg. I mean, like they're trying to fight to keep from amputating her leg. And so just kind of, let me just make this point about Lindsey Vonn a little bit. And this is my personal feeling, and I can't even, it's just a feeling. Like, a lot of times I can justify things logically or use geopolitics or whatever, but this one's just kind of a gut feeling. I feel terrible for Lindsey Vonn, but I also, at this point, kind of feel like she's a little selfish, because she's getting too old to do this. Her career's on the downslope. Then she gets injured. And it's just like, girl, let it go. Nobody wants to watch the Olympics so you can be crippled for life. Nobody wants to watch the Olympics to watch you have to be casualty evacuated by helicopter while you're screaming like a crazy person because you just folded you now have, you've got 4 bends in your leg. I mean, at some point, it's kind of like, it's a little bit on you. It's pretty selfish to put everybody through that. And nobody will say that because she's this media darling and she has this reputation. But there's a lot of people that are looking at the Lindsey Vonn situation and they're going, Jesus Christ, like, come on, just get off, and at some point, like, I don't know, like, when she tore her ACL, I mean, couldn't the coaches or the coaching staff or the U.S. Olympic Committee or the however all that works, couldn't they be like, okay, you're off, there's an alternate? Because there has to be an alternate, right? But no, instead, they had let this girl go out there with an ACL tear and just destroy herself. And what if she loses her leg? Like, Lindsey Vonn, she may be old for an Olympian, but she's relatively still young. I think she's maybe 40. Attractive. I mean, she has, so much she could do. Like, as far as endorsements or life beyond this, she has a name that she can carry on. But now, I mean, what if she ends up, there's peg leg over there. Like, no one's going to want to, like, it could really hurt her. Like, even hurt her, I mean, obviously physically hurt her, but it can hurt her career, her post-skiing career, her post-athletic career. And it's just like, somebody, like, I look at Lindsey Vonn and I'm just thinking, like, what the hell's going on over there? Like, is there nobody in this woman's orbit to be like, yo, the fuck you doing? Like, come on. Like, in the U.S. skiing team, like, yo, the fuck you doing? Come on, like, this is over. But no, they just let this girl do this, and like, everyone had to watch that horrible nonsense. And I hope there's a lesson in there for somebody, if not for Lindsey Vonn, maybe for everybody else. It reminds me of, there's this old saying, because I'm an old guy now, because I'm facing being old, I mean, like she's 40 and she's old. Like, trust me, like I'm getting old now. There's a phrase they use with old guys and like the car keys, and it goes, "It's better to stop driving 6 months too early than 1 second too late, old man." Ugh. And speaking of ugh, we've every every year, or every 4 years, every Winter Olympics, we all have to pretend that we care about curling. Like that, I promise you, we didn't see curling when when in 1980 there wasn't curling in the Olympics. We never saw this, didn't know what this was, and like we're all now trying to figure out like I can't remember what they call that green line. It has some goofy name, but then you're not supposed to touch the curling rock after it, or once it crosses the green line, and then I think you're not allowed to touch the curling rock. Do you call it a rock or a curl? I don't know what you call that thing. With the weird bowling ball that doesn't roll. I don't, maybe you're not even allowed to touch it if you're not using the handle that's on them. And so, there's this weird touch thing that they're doing. And then you find out this entire sport, there's no referees for this. They referee themselves. And it's like, oh, you're cheating now. Fuck you, so never play. And it's just like, all right, if I was running the Olympics, I'd be like, yep, ixnay on the curling A. Be like, knock this shit off. But the reality is the controversy will probably drive an interest in, maybe in having it come back next year. But as far as I'm concerned, I'd be like, yeah, we're going to pull this fucking thing because this is just a clusterfuck and y'all can't even keep anything straight. And you don't even have referees. Like, can't call fouls on the ice. Like, what kind of game is that? Because obviously, if that's the case and these people are cheating, it's like, oh, you're blatantly cheating. But nothing we can do about it. Here's kind of a weird thing. Again, the wings, the wind from the wings of a butterfly, cause a puff of air to eventually turn into a cloud, to turn into a storm that, ends up being a hurricane that hits the East Coast United States. Ever heard that kind of theory? I'm kind of watching this meltdown with the Canadians and the curling. And I guess the women have been, if I recall correctly, again, I could have been in some poisoned heart attack fever dream, but I think the girls were supposedly caught doing the same move too. And I guess it's cheating. Maybe it's not. I don't want to get a letter, but fuck you. I don't care. You kind of wonder, because there's a lot of drama in Canada right now with maybe the country's going to break apart, which again, this isn't the first time this has happened in my lifetime. This would be the third time that there's been serious consideration given to the idea of Canada breaking apart. And I'm watching this curling drama and some of this stuff, and part of me's wondering if in some weird way this will lead up to the breakup of Canada, which I'm sure this comment's just going to go over really well with our Canadian listeners. And I'm trying to be anti-Canadian. I'm not anti-Canadian. Like, I'm just not. But, there seems to be a lot of strife, around the Canadians right now, just with a lot of different things, with trying to get your military to function and dealing with China and the economics of your country and your language and trying to figure out how to procurement of F-18s versus F-35s and NATO expenditures and just the cost of everything, cost of living, and your immigration policies and your speech laws, and just Canada seems like a freaking disaster right now. And the dude don't touch my rock, dude. I wonder if that's going to be the cherry on top to lead to the breakup of Canada. So that's what I was watching. That's what I was wondering when I was watching it on the internet. Okay, let's get to some gun stuff. So just a few interesting things. again, kind of getting back to the swing of the podcast, kind of get used to talking a little bit and actually being able to breathe. This has not gotten any coverage in the gun media. But again, business guy. Beretta has gone out onto the equities markets and purchased, because Ruger is a publicly traded company. Beretta has purchased 10% of the public stock of Ruger. And if you look at Beretta and you look at kind of what they've been doing, they've been on a buying spree for a while. They own Steiner, which now basically, I think, is basically in Dayton, Ohio. There's a Steiner scope manufacturing facility south of like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Kind of think Area 51 for you folks that aren't from Cincinnati or Ohio. They own, what stuff Beretta has bought? I mean, they've bought all kinds of stuff. Did they buy Holland and Holland? I'm trying to remember what they bought. They've bought, it's kind of, they bought all kinds of things. And it's like, what's going on with them buying Ruger? And something's up there. Now, what that is, I don't know, but I think it'd be fair to assume that since, they're apparently, their CEO, who is, last name is Beretta, it is a family-owned business. And I don't believe it's a publicly traded company. Beretta is a privately held, family-owned business that they, it's fair to assume that they will probably look to have a board seat at Ruger. They own 10% of the company. I think it's fair to assume that they could probably get a board seat, which means that they are going to start possibly having some influence on what actually happens, what happens at Ruger and what Ruger tries to do. And so right now, the CEO of Beretta has said that they're not planning on a hostile takeover, that they're just interested in Ruger, that they are they recognize how important the American market is. And I think part of it is too, that Beretta recognizes, even with the tariffs got turned over and everything, but we'll see that. But you can see no matter what happens with Trump's tariffs and all that, that the economics of the totally open world, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. My mouth is, not my brain. Beretta recognizes that one of the things that hurt them when going for the modular handgun or the joint service pistol or whatever, I can't remember which one they were on now, that they weren't an American company. And yeah, they have their factory and do whatever. But the reality is Beretta, everybody's all these firearms manufacturers are kind of bringing their stuff into the U.S. I've even heard multiple rumors that H&K is going to make a G36 semi-auto rifle in the United States for the U.S. consumer. So, Beretta, all these companies basically want to do what Glock has done. If you're a foreign company, is they want to be in the U.S. and they want to really be U.S. companies. Even if they want to have major footprints here. So I don't know if Beretta really has strong eyes on Ruger, but they definitely are looking at Ruger. Something's up there. And, in the gun community, we can kind of make this point. Ruger, I wouldn't, again, this is going to split the listeners. Ruger probably doesn't have the best reputation as far as super high-end guns. I think that's fair to say. They're not considered a higher-end gun manufacturer. But one thing I think everybody, if you're being honest, there's always exceptions, certain models that may be exceptions to the rule. But if you're being honest, you recognize Ruger as a company is a very good manufacturer. Ruger knows what they're doing. And Ruger knows how to make something that lasts. And if something doesn't last, they know how to fix it. They have the skill, they have the technical skill Ruger probably has the technical skill to manufacture anything they want. They just choose not to because they want to be in a certain economic target demographic, not because they can't. And I think Beretta buying a significant equity stake in that company is confirmation of that. Just watch this story. Just as a passing note, there is the whole M7 277 Fury 6.5 by 51, gun situation. Somebody has asked the U.S. Marine Corps, do you want the M7 rifle? The Marine Corps has come out and said, nah, we're good with the M27. We're not going to get rid of it. And, that's the H&K gun that they got. They hooked and crooked their way through that gun. They basically were able to procure it as a squad automatic weapon alternative because of the way that the piston is set up. You could just lay down continuous fire with it. But, they spent some money, but they were able to get it quickly and, get it on their table of equipment, and then they just basically issued them to everybody. So they kind of hooked their way into that one. And that's not an uncommon thing. That's how that's how the Glock 19 ended up in military service. That's how the F-18 Super Hornet ended up in military service. It's they try to do these little things to get stuff so they can just get it approved quickly. So what I was thinking to myself, well, the Marine Corps M27, it's a 20-inch rifle. And, maybe with ammo technology, they can keep velocities up. And maybe they don't need that M7. I was like, wait a minute, how long is the barrel on the M27? I thought it was a 20-inch because I think of it as an A4, like an M16 A4, a 20-inch barrel. I was like, wait a minute, how long is that barrel? Turns out the barrel on the M27, at least what I think I've been able to find, is 16.5 inches. Is that right? Or did the internet lie to me? So you tell me in the comments. Is the M27 a 16.5-inch barrel or is it a 20-inch barrel? But if it's a 16.5-inch barrel, that's just interesting, because just also, on the civilian side and the collector side, it's like, the military, they get the 14.5s. The Marines always had the 20s, but, the 14.5s, that's where it's at in the 12s. And, you got Marines running around with 16-inch barrels now, 16.5-inch barrels, and I don't know if that's with or without muzzle device. So maybe they're at 18, but it's just interesting because you're kind of seeing with the increased effectiveness of body armor and worrying about cheaper and cheaper body armor being more readily available to more and more adversaries, that, velocity is becoming pretty important to the modern military, thinking about the next war, in an urban environment in mega cities, which they still always worry about. So, and again, a lot of people that complain that the M7 and the 277 Fury 6.8 by 51, is about shooting across valleys in Afghanistan. Yes, but not quite. It's not all that. So the military realizes that there's a certain segment of the military that realizes there is a high likelihood that you're going to see more and more combat in these very, very built up urban areas where, you've got potentially long shots down, blocks. If you look at your average, city that's laid out, by grid squares, if you go looking down the boulevard, you've got pretty long shots. If you're elevated off a building, you've got pretty long shots. Also, with that power, barrier penetration, punching through walls and windows and vehicles, it's not all about the last war and the M7. I am not advocating for the M7. I'm not defending the M7. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying there are some arguments to the other side. It's not just a clear cut like this is stupid, and the other side doesn't have any good input as to maybe why they might want this. So, but yeah, the Marines M27, they're keeping it. You know what? Maybe I should build a clone. This is a story. This is a sad tale. Mongo knows about this because I'd been texting about it because I was sick and I had a hard time getting over there to do it. And so I missed out on a B&T manufactured MP5 SD 9mm subgun that semi-auto. So I guess they don't call it the MP5 SD. I can't remember what maybe BT5. I don't whatever B&T calls their MP5. But it's a true SD, with the barrel that's got the ports in it and slows down the ammo. Excuse me there. Still recovering. So slows down the ammo. And I was looking at this gun and it wasn't cheap. It was going to be, with tax, it's going to be well over $7,000. And then what I was going to do was I was going to go get one of those FRT packs there was a company that makes FRT packs for the MP5, and stick it on there and then basically wait and see if they ban the FRTs and whether they're going to have to crack open the NFA and grandfather them in. And I was going to hook or crook my way with basically a MP5 into the NFA for about $8,500 to $8,500. But literally, I went over to go buy it, and the guy goes, "We sold it last night," and because I was sick, and I mean, I thought I had time. I mean, if I really thought it was going to sell, I could have gone over there on my deathbed and bought it. But literally, there was some question whether I was going to die. So, it's like, well, it wasn't really quite on my mind. So, yeah, missed out on that one. So that begs the question, do I go out and try to find another B&T MP5? I will only want the SD. That's really what I want because I think it's very useful and usable. I don't want just an MP5 sticking a suppressor on it. I want the SD. So do I try to buy one of these B&Ts? Or there are companies out there that are, H&K, people converting some of the Century, I guess some, or MKE's bringing in some. I think the MKE is definitely on MP5 tooling. Like, I don't know a whole lot about MP5s. I'd want a gun that works. So if you have any experience or opinions about these other alternatives to having an MP5 SD made so I can do my evil plan to get on the NFA and not have to spend $40,000 to $60,000. By the way, the dealer that had this B&T gun that sold the night before, and it was like, it was going to be about $8,000 of a tax. They have an MP5 for sale, fully transferable, and it's $60-some thousand, and it's not an SD, and it's just like, So if you have any opinions, I don't know, MKEs, are they okay? Somebody was trying to tell me that these Century guns are worth it. I just have a hard time believing that. Part of me is just like, just get the B&T, or maybe find an H&K one that's been professionally converted. That's what B&T did. Because you just can't swap barrels on MP5s. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So you kind of got to know what you're doing. And again, I want the SD. So I want that special barrel so you can, slow down the 9mm ammo. So leave it in the comments below if you have any opinions or feedback on MP5 variants and what I should do for that project. Interesting industry news. This is really from around here, Cincinnati area. Faxon Firearms, yes, they are a local company to us. There's this was not reported in the business or in the firearms industry, but it was reported in the local business stuff. Faxon Firearms has been, Faxon, whatever they're called. I'm sure they have different divisions. But I know exactly. I know Bob Faxon and I have we've we know each other. So they have received a DoD contract to make bomb bodies and containers. Because again, they're like a air. Faxon started off as like this aerospace manufacturing company, not really a gun company. Bob's a gun guy, but the company was really an aerospace subcontractor for, again, we have General Electric around here. We have all these other, military things. We've got the Air Force is up there in Dayton. There's some opportunities here for high-end manufacturing. $473.23 million for Faxon Firearms to make bomb bodies and containers. And it's like, wow, that's pretty good. I don't know what the profit margin is on bomb bodies and containers, but I think it would be safe to assume, I could be wrong, but I think it would be safe to assume that Faxon Firearms will make more profit on this DoD contract than most firearm companies make profit on their gun sales, even possibly over multiple years. So just kind of keep that in mind relative to business and kind of how things work and what's considered a big business, what's considered a small business, what's considered a successful business, and what's kind of like, what's a primary business and what's a secondary business. So $473 million for bomb bodies and containers. Speaking of businesses and how businesses work, I can't remember if we talked about this on the last podcast with Mongo. I don't think we did. Trey Knight of Knight's Armament, who is Reed Knight's son, was arrested on multiple felony charges for, I wasn't even, like, he was running around some neighborhood with a pitchfork and screaming and yelling and hitting cameras and hitting houses and threatening people, and it's looking really bad. And makes you wonder, I don't know anything. I've never met Trey Knight and I've never met Reed Knight. I don't know them at all. I mean, like, not even, like, I don't know them at all. Like, I don't even really know anyone that knows them. I don't know how Knight's Armament is set up as a company. I'm assuming it is just a privately held family or personal, business with the Knight family. And, the founder of that company is not getting any younger, and they have to start thinking about the future. And I don't think Trey Knight's going to be able to take over this company. With the charges he's got and some of the stuff, I mean, the rumors you hear about Trey Knight, just you hear them everywhere, especially now. If any of that's even true, and I'm not going to repeat that here, but just what we do know from the charges, the multiple felony charges, I mean, he's not going to be able to have guns. He's not going to be able to be on a gun license, machine gun manufacturer, '07, destructive devices. Like, there's issues. And so it makes me wonder if Knight's Armament at some point is going to be up for sale. And who would buy them? I think they would definitely be bought. They have a long track record of coming up with some interesting things, but there's a lot more. I think when Knight's Armament was really cutting edge, there weren't as many companies competing in that space like there are now. Like, now you've got all kinds of companies like that are super aggressive and super smart and just super interesting. They come up with stuff that, Knight's Armament used to be kind of like, the bat cave, the stuff they'd come up with. Like, it was like skunk works. You'd be like, damn, like, look at that. Damn, look at that. And now I wonder, I think changes, you know what? I'm just going to say it like this. Worth keep an eye on Knight's armament, because you may end up seeing some changes over there. So one more thing on the possibly to buy list, and then we'll go ahead and maybe we'll get into the blotter, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Murdoch and Company is a company that is manufacturing reproduction SA-80, which is the British Army bullpup, the UK Army bullpup. I shouldn't say British. The UK Army bullpup rifle. I think they're doing a limited run. Last I checked, I think they were about $13,000. I think it's interesting. They're claiming that that their next more modern version of this gun, of this SA-80 gun, that's, you know, you can put all these lights and lasers on and stuff, as opposed to the one that they're doing. They're doing a limited run of 100 that are like from the 1980s format, so they're not as modular, say, like the later versions. So if you're a collector or a milsurp guy, you probably want the older one, which is now like, I think, $13,000. And then they're claiming that the future one will be maybe $4,500. You know, the question is, do we buy one? Do we buy an early one? Do we wait for a late one? Do I give them the money for an early one? And what if it doesn't show up? Also, kind of just looking at, as a business person, part of me is wondering, you know, do they need to sell the 100 guns at $130,000 or 100 guns at $13,000 a piece so they can afford to make this other gun that they're claiming will be $4,500? And how viable is that? And do I want to risk? I've kind of had my fill of companies that, you know, manufacturers or people that are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and stuff drags on for years and I don't get my shit. I'm kind of to the point now where I'm tempted to just buy it as I see it if it's completed and just pay more, because ultimately it ends up being cheaper and less of a hassle. cough, ZB26. So what say you? Since I didn't get the B&T gun, should I just forego the B&T gun and get the SA-80? Take the chance? Or should I get the MP5 SD gun? And, you know, because it's B&T, like they're definitely going to be around. I don't know if this Murdoch and Company is going to be around, but you know, leave in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Okay, let's do the police blotter and go ahead and toss it. So I got a couple good ones here. The first one, which, you know, this has all kind of happened. It's just almost old news, which, I mean, it's probably hadn't even been a week, but, you know. The trans hockey player, you know, first they were shooting at the hockey rink, and then it turns out the shooter was shooting at his own family, maybe then killed himself. And then you're hearing reports that someone took the shooter out, and then you're hearing reports that that didn't happen, they didn't take the shooter out, that the shooter may have shot themselves with another gun. And then you find out the shooter's trans, was a trans person. And then you find out that the trans person, the father-in-law, because they'd gotten divorced, the trans dude who thinks he's a woman wouldn't move out of his wife's house or ex-wife's house after the divorce, because he's a psychopath. And then, like, the father-in-law, like, got arrested trying to get him out of the house. And then it comes out that the guy's got this big old, was it Totenkopf, whatever, Nazi tattoo on his arm. And then it comes out that the trans guy's son is also a piece of shit that was just sent to jail for trying to burn a church down, or a black church or whatever. And it's just like, you fucking people. I mean, it's just, you know, like, ugh, just terrible. So, But we're gonna go ahead and we're going to lighten it up with a better story. So here is another police blotter story. This is out of Castleberry, Florida. Widow sues strip club after staff sends husband home in taxi amid medical emergency. Now it's like, okay, well that's interesting. Like, what's that about? But what I'm interested in is not going to be what you're interested in. A widow is suing a strip club after staff members allegedly sent her husband home in a taxi while he was suffering a medical emergency. According to WESH, citing a recently filed lawsuit, the widow of Najeev Nayi, I didn't know it was like an Indian guy, has accused the employee of Rachel's North Men's Club and Steakhouse in Castleberry, Florida, of failing to get him proper medical help after he lost consciousness. So I guess they put him in a taxi and sent him home without administering first aid. I guess he was having a heart attack and died. Now, here's the thing that kind of catches my eye. And I'm looking at the picture of the building, but this is called Rachel's North Men's Club and Steakhouse. And I'm like, damn, I need a strip club with a steakhouse in it. That would be awesome. Like, I'd never bought into Hooters, but anyone that knows me knows that I love steak. As a matter of fact, I've actually kind of on orders right now to eat a lot of steak because of all the blood I've lost. So, if there's a men's club and a steakhouse in your metro area, leave it in the comments below so I can make a note so when I travel that I can have a list and go around and eat at your strip club steakhouses, because I think that's awesome. Okay, final story for the police blotter, and this one is actually kind of gun related, and it wasn't widely reported at all, but it came across my desk and I thought it was worth sharing here. This is out of Moscow, Russia. Russia sentences U.S. citizen. What's he doing in Russia, weirdo? To 4 years in jail for trying to take Kalashnikov stocks. Like what? Let me say that again. Let me read this for you so it makes sense. Russia sent an American dude to prison for trying to smuggle AK-47 stocks out of the country. And it's like, well, this is where you're going to have to learn your local laws. So a Russian court has sentenced a U.S. citizen to 4 years in jail for trying to take the stocks of Kalashnikov rifles out of a Moscow airport, the RIA state news agency reported on Tuesday. The U.S. citizen, who collects Kalashnikov weapons, bought 2 Kalashnikov stocks and checked in a suitcase containing the butts at Moscow's Vnukovo Airport, but made no customs declaration, the news agency said. The man, who has not been identified by the news agency, was found guilty under an article in the criminal code dealing with the smuggling of weapons. RA said the man partially admitted his guilt. Reuters was unable to reach the man while he was in detention. U.S. State Department advised against all travel to Russia, and news repeatedly told its citizens leave immediately, whatever. Russian officials often question and threaten U.S. citizens. Let's see here. Deny the U.S. allegations. So, yeah, I don't know who this guy is, but he's apparently one of us. And he was caught with stocks coming out of Russia. Now, there's 2 possibilities here because we just got to be real. Number one, it's probably totally fine to take stocks out of Moscow. But if you're an American traveling through the international airport, you just get caught while being American. And it's a way for them to put you in jail so they can use you for leverage in prisoner swaps later on. So he may be guilty of just, flying while being American, which is the other, thing you have to ask yourself is like, why the fuck are you in Russia? Come on. Now, the other thing is, and I think a lot of people in the U.S. don't appreciate this, gun laws around the world are very, very, very different. Very different. And then you're like, yeah, no kidding. I'm like, no. There are things that you would be shocked. Now, people always, in the U.S., they always want to pay attention to things one way, but not the other way. So, like in America, they'll talk about things like, oh, yeah, in the rest of the world, suppressors are no big deal. They're like mufflers. You can buy them in the grocery store. Like they're just, they're no big deal. But in other parts of the world, for example, barrels are guns. Like, I can't go into too much, but I mean, you get caught with a barrel in Israel, and you're not supposed to have you're not supposed to have if you have a barrel and you're not supposed to have it, they charge you with having a gun. That's why you see a lot of these places, like a lot of these guns that come out of foreign countries, they serialize the barrels because the barrel is the gun, is considered the gun, or is considered a gun, as it moves internationally with EUCs and all this other kind of stuff. So, you got to know that. And then here's another one that I think a lot of people don't understand. And this one will get hunters. This one will get hunters quite a bit. And this is one I've had to kind of look at too with such of my Blaser stuff. Folding stocks in a lot of countries, especially in say Africa, are considered military style weapons. So like I have a Blaser R8. I've put this where is that from? GRS Ragnarok chassis, and that's from, where are they out of? Not in Finland. Where is it? Not Belgium, but in the Netherlands. Wherever, they're up there somewhere, and it has a folding stock on it. And if I were to take that gun to go hunting in Africa, and there's been opportunities to do that, and oddly enough, like there was conversations today about some of that stuff, I would probably have to take that gun out of that chassis and put it back into some kind of regular like Monte Carlo looking stock, because as that gun is moving internationally and it's being opened, and with that folding stock and all that metal, it looks like a sniper rifle. And so, you could get jammed up on that. So again, in America, we don't think of anything about folding stocks. It doesn't even mean anything to us, but in other parts of the world, you could end up in a Russian gulag. So yeah, there's your lesson of the day. So this wraps up episode 395 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see number stories or pictures, links, stuff like this, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. We back, baby. Have a good night.